basically, in summation, what happened is this. Tom Brady got hurt with the Pats at the end, right? And basically this entire year played with, was it fully? A fully torn MCL. Maybe you can't minimize this then.
In the same knee that he tore the ACL years back in, 08?
That was 08. That's when Matt Castle came in. They went 10-6, didn't make the playoffs. Yeah, that was opening day when that. Yeah, it's amazing how little contact he's taken. And good. I mean, that's, even though we just destroyed every team in the AFC East, I don't want to see great players get hurt. I want to eventually win the right way. Brady's a marvel. But I wonder how much we're making out of this. Like, and Tiki's even said it, whether it's the PCL, which is what he hurt, the MCL versus the ACL. I mean, I don't know if I can come up with a great comparison, like what the true difference is. It's like the only part of my body I don't know a lot about. Like, if it's anything else, I could tell you. The back, the Achilles, the elbow. The knee, I'm not saying that Brady shouldn't get even more love and props. Oh, look at Brady. He's 40-something, and he's playing with a torn MCL. That just enhances the legend. But the story here, and this is what a lot of people make a big deal out of, is that it wasn't on the injury report. Not once the whole year for the Bucs. Now, got hurt with the Pats. This would obviously be the responsibility of the Tampa Bay Bucs for the listing, the weekly listing. Listen, as a guy, you know what? We got the sharp Tierney shades. We do. As a guy who loves the spread, I love this, and we're already getting ready to plot a ton of wins for you coming up when we start week 1. Oh, we're all over it. Sharp Tierney's already been in the lab with a pen and a pad. He's ready. Sharp Tierney's ready, even though I lost the other night with the Suns. But as somebody who studies lines and really looks at line movement, yeah, there's an instinctual part. I could take these off. I'm just messing around with Sharp Tierney. There's an instinctual part. There's a data point and a data part for sure. There's a gut part. There's a bit of guesswork as well, deduction. Try not to guess too much, but certainly guessing intelligently through deduction, I guess is what I mean. But when you study lines and when you gamble, like, the injury report is important for sure. But I'd be lying to you if I said that I sat there and I study the injury report. As I'm also not a professional gambler. I'm sure those who are professionals, maybe they do. What I think is most important for injuries, like if you have myriad injuries on the offensive line, well, then I know that you're not going to be able to really pass the ball effectively, which means you're going to have to run more. And you might not run successfully, but when you run, tick, 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 clock starts to go rather than some passes that are incomplete. And I might be inclined to bet the under. Like, those are things you have to think about. Like, I definitely think about that stuff. I don't sit there, with my glasses, whether it's my sharp glasses or my real glasses, so I can see the fine print these days, looking at injury by injury. Now, if a quarterback's banged up, what I will do, if there's an injury, and this is important, and maybe this is where you can knock the Bucs, and maybe this is where they need to be penalized, because this is all about the gambling. The only thing that matters with the injury report, it's all about gambling. They're not putting out the injury report. If the Bucs are playing the Saints, they're not putting out the injury report necessarily for Sean Payton. You think Sean Payton's actually going on CBSSports.com to see, let's see, who's nicked up in the... Now, they've got the All-22 film. They've got the intel. They don't rely on that, right? It is a guide for bettors. Now, Mike's shaking his head. I'm not saying that they don't look at it. I'm not saying that at all. Of course they do. But they do not rely on that for game plans. They know a million more times than what's out there in black and white, little letters, doubtful, questionable, out, etc. But... if I've got a secondary that's banged up, I'm going to rock the over. In most cases. Obviously, weather would possibly offset that if it's really muddy and wet. But when I look at it this way, there's got to be integrity. And the injury report is for gambling purposes solely, as I've already expressed. And if you circumvent that, and if you're misleading, as the Bucs totally were in the case of Tom Brady, like, I'm kind of thinking through this on the air. Like, I don't think it's a huge deal. But when I really get to the essence of what the injury report is for, to guide the general betting public, I mean, you probably should punish them where it's listen, I'd love to drum up some incredibly hot take and say they should lose a draft pick. I'm not going to waste anybody's time with that. Where I struggle is, what should the penalty be? All right, you want to fine him $500,000? Okay, good. Does it impact you, Santher? Nope. Does it impact me? Nope. Does it impact Joe betting public? Nope. Does it impact the Saints fan? Nope. It doesn't impact the Panthers fan. Doesn't impact anybody in the division. It doesn't. So unless it's a reduction of draft equity or like the suspension of a coach, what the hell's the big deal? Like, why should I get energized over this? It doesn't change anything.
It doesn't.
Except that people were misled when they bet.
It doesn't change anything to go. You can't do anything really to go back. But here's what I'm looking at, right? Maybe coaches and other teams aren't necessarily noticing the injury report or relying on it, but they see it. And if it was known that Brady was on a hobbled knee the entire year, you're telling me that's not going to impact how teams are going to attack Brady or how they're going to
not one bit
against him?
Not one bit. Now, I'll give you a different example. If Kyler Murray's injury was concealed, now Kyler Murray hurt his shoulder. We've talked about this a lot. He was, in the mix for the MVP. Back, 4 or 5. Not going to win it, but he was in the conversation for I think they were 6-2 or 6-3. I think he got hurt in the Bills game, if I'm not mistaken. Right? Was the Bills game? Bills or Seattle? See, I think it was Seattle. One of those two games. Got hurt. His rushing attempts dropped. His rushing yards dropped. The way he played dropped. He was no longer a threat to leave the pocket. So they were able to deploy opposing defenses, play him very differently because he's a threat to throw a 70-yard, missile because of his arm and also run and gash you 50 yards in the open field. Tom Brady plays one way, whether he's fully healthy or completely compromised. Doesn't matter. Incapable of making anybody miss. The only thing he can remotely do running is the quarterback sneak, which he's as good as anybody in the history of the game doing. And they don't do it as much as they used to. But there was a point where he was like 50 for 50. I think he's failed on a few lately, but he was perfect. So even if you know that the hey, guys, listen, Tom's MCL is hit him harder. You get a free shot. You're trying to pop Brady no matter what, because that's your way to maybe win the division, certainly try to win the game. I don't mean dirty. I don't mean go really low, but, if he's out of the pocket and he's a runner, crush him. Crush him. So the answer is no to your question. The answer is no.
You're probably right. But listen, we also know that not every play is the cleanest thing in the world, right? There is some dirtiness happening in all sports, especially in football. Sure. Tiki always talks about what happens on the bottom of a pile. So, maybe if you know that Brady's knee is hurting, maybe, when you're on the bottom of a pile, someone gives a little twist or something along those lines that does something that could impact Brady and how successful and effective he is. And if that happens, listen, we're all lauding Brady. Oh, my God, he won the Super Bowl while having a fully torn MCL. But then there's the other side of it. Well, yeah, I guess he won a title without disclosing that he had a fully torn MCL. I'll
let you finish. It's not his job to disclose it.
Not him.
It's the Bucs.
But without teams understanding. Again, you bring up Kyler Murray. Had we not known that he was hurt, if that was not disclosed, think about the conversations that we would be having about Kyler Murray.
Oh, he's not as good as we thought. Oh, he's regressing. Oh, is he really the quarterback of the future? I agree with that.
So there's a conversation there where, not just for media purposes, but we're talking about legacy. We're talking about GOAT. We're talking about all-time great.
No better. He's already there. No matter what happens the next 50 years, nobody's taking GOAT status from him.
For sure. But when we're talking legacy, doesn't every bit of information matter? Again,
this enhances his legacy. You think that this detracts from it?
It enhances his legacy of what he did while injured, but I think it detracts in a way that it wasn't disclosed, and therefore teams didn't know about it.
I appreciate what you're doing. It's a different way of looking at it. I'm being fully sincere. But I think you're placing far too much value or emphasis on the impact and even the perception of such. I've gotten over it. Now, Teak has no issues with the deflated footballs. I was more, also partly derived from jealousy, to be honest with you, maybe. But at the end of the day, something important, I'd like to think I don't let that blur my sensibility. But this is where I'm no, I love this. This is gamesmanship. This is just toughness. This is old school, take no prisoners. This is just throwback stuff. No problem with it whatsoever.